It's like, listen, if you're gonna force yourself to change, it can work, but the reality is you really have to have some sort of emotional connection to that change for it to be sustainable. When it comes to nighttime routines, they are just as important as our morning routines because they set up our next day. There was a wise man that said to me, hey, that Sunday night is one of the most important nights of your entire week because it sets your week into motion. Now, for the ideal, obviously we're super standardized and we have perfect routines all the time and we hit it all the time. But the vast majority of us are human and are trying to figure out what works best. So my suggestion is setting a reminder of the ideal time that you would like to go to bed so that you can wake up at the time that you would respect out of yourself. That is the first rule. And making sure that you have some sort of system that reminds you, hey, an hour before bed, you should probably wind down. I use the Rise app, which you can program to figure out how much sleep time that you ideally need. You can figure out what the ideal window of time for you to wake up is and what the ideal window of time for you to go to sleep is. And this app reminds me that, hey, Turab, it's 9 o'clock or it's 8:30. You're going to have a wind down time in this pocket. You might want to think about falling asleep. Now, regardless of all of these things, they might still not work. You might still be inconsistent about your nightly routine. And that hour or so that you want to get to just chill and watch your anime or go and, get stoned or whatever it is in your life, have an interesting life, have a novel life. There's been plenty of times in my life where I've gotten very little sleep, but I've woken up in the morning with tremendous amounts of energy because I took my life into my hands the night before. I painted, I created music, I got those emails done, and I felt really good about myself waking up in the morning. So there isn't really a specific thing that I can give you advice on besides have an environment that consistently reminds you of what your ideal is. Try your hardest to get to sleep at that time. And even if you fluctuate, if you fall asleep a little bit later, still try to wake up at that time that you set for yourself because the suffering that you'll go through because you're tired will be an ample reminder that, hey, it's probably good to fall asleep a little bit earlier. And that's the funny part about life is we often end up changing when we get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that's the rule that I've always gone by. It's like, listen, if you're going to force yourself to change, it can work. But the reality is you really have to have some sort of emotional connection to that change for it to be sustainable. And what that means is you have to fuck up all the time. You really just have to mess up and you have to keep messing up and you have to keep messing up. And then you'll get to a point where you think to yourself, listen, I can't do this anymore. I have a family. I can't do this anymore. I have a job that matters. I can't do this anymore. I have my health care, right? I had a heart attack. I had a stroke, something like that. This can't happen anymore. So if we don't have that understanding in ourselves, it's going to be very difficult to make sure that we are indeed evolving as human beings. So nightly routines, super important, just as important as morning routines. My other suggestions are make sure to try to write down the things that you would like to get done tomorrow, the 3 most impactful things that you would be really happy about that get done tomorrow. At least have them subconsciously in the back of your head and consciously written down somewhere so you can actually tick them off and feel really good about the things that you accomplished. The other thing is eat dinner well before you need to go to sleep. Oftentimes people, myself included, miss dinner because we're so busy, and then we end up making the excuse of, hey, it's this time at night, I need to go and eat something, and then we stay up for another hour and a half when we should have just had that succinct time to eat. The other thing is when it comes to screen time, you do ideally want to stop going on your phone or watching TV or whatever it is an hour before bed. The blue light from the screen actually makes it much harder to go to sleep. I know it's hard to do, but again, that time can be used for your spiritual, that time can be used for your knowledge base when it comes to reading something. That time can be used for exercise if you really need to get something out and done at the end of the day. But that wind down time at the end of the night, you got to make it kind of like a sacred thing. You got to be like, okay, well, what are the things that I can do that will avoid pushing out the sleeping time? And in general, the thing that I've realized about my life, when it comes down to rationalizing having a regularity in my morning and nightly routine and the time frame that I go to sleep, you really have to just realize that when you are well rested and when you feel good for the most part and your body is not aching or you're not nauseous or anything in the morning, right? That's self-love, guys. Our parents, if they're good parents and if they had the time, did that for ourselves, for us when we were younger. And despite that, we probably still stayed awake and did some nonsense. But on those days that we did get to sleep, we were better at school, we were better as friends, we were better as children, we were better as maybe leaders in our community. And the reality is, if we don't get that sleep and if we don't get that consistency, we're not showing us ourselves the love that we deserve. And that resentment increases over time, and it tends to leak into our relationships. It tends to make our interactions with people a little bit more spiky. And the reality of that is not having all of the opportunities, especially when it's compounded over days and weeks of having that resentment built in for ourselves. So again, maybe you'll have to get to the point where you're sick and tired of being sick and tired and sick of resenting who you are. And that's the thing that moves you along. But really, just take one step, formulate that environment, formulate your ideal. Most people don't even do that. What time would you want to go to bed? What time would you want to wake up? Set a reminder on your phone an hour before that. Hey, it's time to wind down. Those reminders, even though consistently you might end up ignoring them, like putting snooze on the alarm, it's better than not having them in place whatsoever. And you can use them as an indicator for data, right? Or you can use them as an accumulation of data. The reality is, if you hit that period and you go and stay consistent in that time frame, you get more data for yourself being loving toward yourself and being routine and disciplined, hopefully something that you respect. Actualize your potential catalyst. This world needs you.